Hello everyone! Welcome to my first ever craft video. So today I want to go over 5 writing lessons that I have learned from the Anatomy of Prose by Sacha Black. And these things are what I have been implementing into my own flash fiction to help me level up my writer's game. So the first lesson I found is in chapter 3.3 called Repetition, Repetition, Repetition. But what I found is about how to find your author voice. And the sentence that I really love is, in the excitement of a first draft, the words gush in an impressive exorcist-style vomit fountain. Your voice is in there, but it's buried in the sticky lumps and crusty crumbs. So she continues on, but Sacha, how do I know what words to lose and what words to keep? You eliminate any word that, when removed, doesn't impact the meaning of your sentence. So don't be wordy, be concise. Get rid of redundant words, repeated words, crutch phrases, repeated descriptions, and don't have your opening and closings be too similar chapter to chapter. So opening and closing repetition. And use the character's name. Don't always say, like, the man, the boy, but actually say their name a bit. This whole thing of finding your voice by just narrowing it down has really helped. So I've only written before a novel. I had finished draft 3, and then I picked up this book, and I have now been writing flash fiction to practice just writing it out and then editing and editing and editing in really short, compact flash fictions to be able to find my author voice, to be able to excavate through all of this world building and stuff that is good for a novel but not necessary for really short pieces. So cutting out all of the icing on top and just getting down to the nitty-gritty detail of what is a story, a beginning, a middle, and an end. So that has really been helpful. Another thing I have learned, point number 2, is about the use of cliches. So something like, it took a turn for the worst. So it says, cliches are redundant, they are also lazy description. Your reader is a queen. Queens don't deserve bland words. So instead of saying it took a turn for the worst, you can make it world specific and something that the character specifically would think. So instead of taking a turn for the worst, you could say it took a left at the yellow bus and dove straight into the manure pile, if that has anything to do with their world. Like if they live in the middle of nowhere in Idaho and live on a dairy farm. So there are many different phrases that you can swap out or just get rid of to make things less cliche. The example that she gives is, she picked up the sword and sliced through his armor, just in the nick of time. And without the cliche is, she picked up the sword and sliced through his armor. So not only does it get rid of a cliche, but it also quickens the pace and makes it more impactful of slice, pick up, and then you can continue on with whatever battle is going on. So the third thing that really stood out to me was the use of strong verbs versus weak verbs. So this is one that I've really taken to heart. So what she says is to take out your weak verbs and replace them with strong verbs. So one of her sentences is, her punch smashed him in the ribs. And she doesn't like the word punch, it's too weak. There's many different types of punches, like a slap, just like a love tap, or like a full-on wallop. And so she suggests to look up synonyms, find out what they each mean, and find which one actually best suits the situation. So which one is more well-suited to your sentence. One thing that I really like doing is changing up my style by adding a ton more strong verbs to my writing. So I just want to read you a little snippet from my flash fiction called Cthulhu Rises, just to give you an idea of the strong verbs that I am loving to use. Leathery wings unfurled, and with each flap, the titan of the old gods rose to the surface, rose to meet humanity. With a crack of lightning, his head breached the surface, forgotten air caressing his face. Over the din of the crashing waves, chanting could be heard. Then I say, with a mighty bellow, Cthulhu jaggernauted through the storm to his followers, those ants who were chanting his name, raising their puny arms towards the heavens. So not only having stronger verbs like jaggernauted and breached, but also those little adjectives that give you insight into the mindset of the character. In this case, the creature Cthulhu sees them as puny arms as he jaggernauts, because he is so huge. So number 4 is these things called gestalt sentences. And she says, you have individual word choices with their individual meanings all sat next to each other, but somehow once you read the sentence as a whole, the meaning can change. It becomes layered and more complex and a little meatier than just the sum of its individual words. The greater meaning is the gestalt principle at work. So I love this idea of different parts of sentences. When they come together, they form the double picture, like the vase and the human faces. So one of the things that I've been working on, not lately, but I was this thing called Fried Brain Town. And there are some sentences that I wrote that I really love. So let me read a little bit of my Fried Brain Town description. The lone tree was used for a hanging, but rarely. Manuscripts that had given up the ghost were staked to it for the sun to bleach their bones back to white. Vultures didn't even try to steal the ideas left out to dry, for they were products of a fried brain. No one cleaned the spittoons where writers would regurgitate words they had been chewing over in an attempt to feel like they were accomplishing something, even though no one would ever see the word vomit. So I love this idea of both something that could mean one thing, but when juxtaposed with something else, means something else, and combined make a bigger picture. So, like with the spittoon, usually that's for chewing tobacco, but in this case it's writers chewing on their words. And nobody sees the word vomit that they spit out into the spittoons. And so just this double entendre is really fun, and I love working with it. So in chapter 12.4, there's the 5th thing that I want to go over, which is juxtaposition, which is building off of what I just talked about. But under her section called micro juxtapositions, she says, on the micro scale, you can use juxtapositions in description and world building, sentences, dialogue, narration, and inner thought. It's also a handy technique for evoking emotion and deepening characterization. In fact, I'm struggling to think of a single place you can't use a juxtaposition. So I love this idea of putting things together that you wouldn't normally think of goes together. She talks about it in her writing about the senses. So she quotes, I believe it's Neil Gaiman in American Gods, about how something smells dusty and musty but also sweet, like a house haunted by the ghost of undead cookies. So just this contrast of sweet and musty together to make undead cookies is just brilliant, and I love it. And so I like juxtaposing different ideas together to try and make them seem unique. So I kind of do a combination of juxtaposition and foreshadowing in my short flash fiction called The Witch's Purge. And in this one little paragraph it says, the 5-year-old boy curled into her shoulder, hiccuping between sobs, wrapping his small fingers in her lilac cloak to ground himself. Her spindly fingers raked through his soft, dark hair, smearing the fallen ashes of his now deceased mother into his baby locks, anointing him. He could not see the grin spreading across her face. So this idea of the ashes of his dead mother, who was just burnt at the stake, being like an anointing, kind of foreshadows this idea that he's like, you'll have to read, but it's a foreshadowing. And then also just the juxtaposition of Ash and a religious, like a death and a like an ordinance. So the death of his mother bringing new life, like a new spiritual life to him. So just that super sad image is an interesting juxtaposition to me. And the bonus number 6. So this is another thing, which is writing with the senses. So I highly recommend watching her interview with I. Riderly on writing the senses. And I have really taken it to heart, and it's definitely improved my writing. So in my flash fiction called Danny's Tunnel, this poor little kid, he is possessed. And so he is eating insects. So just a little warning, this is gross. So, spider after worm after cockroach he chomped, exoskeletons exploding between his teeth and their innards oozing over his tongue like chunky honey. He needed more. Handful after fistful he gorged on them until he threw up and started over. Just the sense of texture and taste and just viscosity is so gross, and I think it really makes it more impactful. And yes, it's disgusting. I'm sorry, but it was the best one I could find on short notice. So just exploding is a powerful verb, and oozed, and just those strong verbs really help bring about a more impactful description using the senses and the strong verbs and the juxtaposition of honey and insect guts. Really gross, but it works because they both have a similar consistency. So, yeah. So those are 6 tips that I found in the Anatomy of Prose by Sacha Black that have definitely been helping my writing. So I hope you guys have learned a little bit and take it with a grain of salt. This is what I have learned from this book, and use what works for you. So I hope you guys all have an amazing day, and I will see you all in the next video.